Hello, everybody. I'm going to give it another minute or two for people to join. I recognize some names in the crowd. I get it if you don't want to turn on your cameras, so totally get it. If you want to turn it on to give me a quick wave hello, that's fine. If not, you can just use the reactions too. Hi, hi, hi. Hi, Michelle. All right, hi. Hello, hello, hello. All right. I'm going to give it another minute. Looks like some people are still joining. So if you would, please type into the chat, just so I know who all's here, your department and like your program, your department, and your year in school. Like how long have you, not like a personal question, but just to see like where you're at in your program. Type into the chat for me. I'll put it in the chat. Awesome. Welcome, Alan. Thank you. Great. Okay. No way, Michelle, you're in your fourth year. Nuh-uh. All right. Good, good. We're having people in all different departments, which is great. Love to see that. Excellent. Hi, Zulu. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get that going. It looks like our people, oh, all right, people will keep adding, coming in. So that's fine too. That it does not bother me a bit. If you need to come and go and all of that, I will be asking you all to type into the chat. So totally understand if you're eating or doing whatever you're doing. But just I'll let you know when I'm asking you to type stuff into the chat for me. All right, let me get my screen set up here. Can you all see that now? Excellent. All right. Okay, I think it's about good. I think we can get started. So thank you all for coming today. I'll give you a little introduction to me first, and then we'll get right into the good stuff here. So my name is Jackie Von Spiegel. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program manager at the Dennis Learning Center. If you're not familiar with the Dennis Learning Center, it is one of the research centers in educational studies in EHE. And so we're a research center. We study learning and motivation in college students. And we're also a service center. So we use the information that we study and information from educational psychology to help students be better students, to develop those skills that are going to help you with your academics. In addition to being the program manager, I'm also a graduate student in EHE. So I'll go ahead and type mine in here. I'm an type as I'm talking, educational psychology, 6th year. Oh, I spelled PhD wrong. It's funny. So I'm in my 6th year, going kind of slow because I'm working full time, but in the process of proposing my dissertation at this point. So I'm with you. I get it. I get the grad school struggles and successes, but this is this is based on research and also on my personal experience of strategies for reading and organizing your research notes. So that's what we're talking about today. Okay, so again, from the Dennis Learning Center, we're housed in Youngkin Success Center on South Campus, so come take a visit whenever you like. Our background is that we have a partnership with Educational Psychology Department, as I mentioned, and our mission is to enhance the academic lives of students at The Ohio State University. My personal mission is to help graduate students, because as one, I know that we don't necessarily get all the support that we might need. So, so I'm very happy to share this information with you all. All right, so here's what I'm going to start with. Reading in grad school is impossible. Yeah, maybe that's a broad statement, but basically here's what I hear from what I do at the Dennis Learning Centers. I'm an academic coach, so I work one-on-one with graduate and professional students from all different disciplines. And this is basically the bottom line as I have seen it. We have more to do than we have time to do it. There's no explicit instruction on how to read or how to take notes. We start asking ourselves, how does everybody else do it? How does this happen? And imposter syndrome starts to take hold. And that's often when I talked with students in academic coaching, they're at this really struggle point where they think everybody else has got it together. But turns out, yes and no, right? Yeah, there still is more reading in every graduate program. There's more reading to do than you have time to do it. Just kind of in academia. There's always more things being published. There's always more things to read. And there's only so many hours in the day. So how do we get it done? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Turning the impossible into done. So the objectives for our workshop today is building a toolbox of reading strategies, making a strategic plan for your reading, identifying your goals for research notes, developing a note-taking system for a synthesis of ideas, and identifying potential obstacles to your reading and note-taking, and then making a weekly writing schedule. Yeah, I'm throwing writing in there too. Writing and reading go hand in hand. All right, so overall, we're turning the impossible into done. And we're going to do that talking about 3 different ways. First, we're going to read smarter, not harder. Maybe smarter and harder. And then we're going to organize our notes to organize your mind. And we're going to do it right now. All right, so let's talk first about our reading strategies. Read smarter, not harder. All right, I'm going to ask you a little quiz here. What kind of a reader are you? So you can just answer these questions for yourself. All right, what kind of reader are you? 1, do you read everything in the same way? 2, do you ever read a section or page and realize you have no idea what you just read? Do you preview the text first? Do you highlight or underline as you read? Do you make notes or annotate as you read? Do you read text from beginning to end, or do you kind of jump around? Do you periodically stop to check your thinking as you're reading? And do you ask questions of the authors as you're reading? All right, tally up. How many yeses do you have here? Put that into the chat. Out of 8, how many yeses? Typically. 7, that's good. Good and bad. Sometimes depends on which question is good. 6, yep, 5, okay. 4-ish, okay, 6. All right. All right, so we're kind of around half-ish, a little more than half of these things. Now, some of them are kind of good strategies and some of them not so much, right? So reading a section and realize you have no idea you just read. Probably a lot of people have that one, right? That happens, it's pretty frequent. So that one especially, all of these things are talking about active versus passive reading. So active versus passive reading, this is really like at the meat of what we're talking about. We often just do passive reading. This is kind of what we've been trained to do throughout our lives, is passive reading. So we jump it right in without a plan. It is less effortful because it's passive. We read linearly, start at the beginning, read every word until the end. We read everything on the text at the same pace, which is often very slow, especially with research articles. It's more prone to mind wandering when we do passive reading. And you are dependent on the author to motivate or interest you, to organize the information, and to tell you what's important. You are dependent. Let's contrast that with active reading. Active reading, you read with a goal or an intention. It is more effortful. You do read strategically. You read with a variable speed within a text. Some things you read faster, some things you read slower. You're mentally engaged and actively thinking. That's the effortful part. You create your own experience of text by asking questions, summarizing as you go, taking notes, and connecting and synthesizing information. So one thing, I like to say is I want to empower you you don't have to be dependent on the author to motivate or interest you. You find what's interesting. You can organize the information yourself. You can do this. I want to empower you to not be dependent on the author for all of these things. You're going to do it yourself. So how do we do it? How do we read actively? All right, so 3 steps. We get set, we check in, and we practice. So first we got to get set. We have to set a goal. Why are you reading this particular thing? Tell me some of your goals for reading. Why do you read research articles? Tell me in the chat. It's assigned for class, number 1 reason, right? To get research ideas. Yep. Usually because it's assigned. Yep, I get it. Furthering your research, knowing if an intervention is effective, figuring out research methods. Yep. So kind of getting ideas from other people's readings and finding out results too, like Lindsay says. Lit review for dissertation. Absolutely. So kind of, I would kind of separate it into 2 different types of reading, right? There's the assigned reading for class. It's just handed to you and your professor says, read this because I say so. And then there's the reading that you find on your own for whatever purpose, right? For your research interest, for your dissertation, for something you're writing, there's a purpose there, right? Do you find that you read those 2 different things differently? The readings you do because it's assigned for class and the readings you do for your research, do you read them the same or do you read them different? I'm genuinely asking. Okay. Yeah, differently, more strategic, pretty much the same. Some people read them the same. Some people read it. Okay. So I already trust that it's necessary. Yep. Okay. Read for assigned class linearly. Yep. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Lane says trying to read class readings as open-minded as you can because they could be useful for your research. You don't know yet. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I think because they're different goals, you should be reading differently. When you have different goals for your reading, that leads to different reading strategies. And that is the key thing I want to hammer home here. Your goals for reading is really important. So even if your goal is, you tell me, because my professor said so, it was assigned for class, I want you to actually think about what do you want? So another question you can ask is, what do you want to get out of this reading? What do you want to get out of this reading? So you can ask that for whether it's for research or for class. So for class, sometimes it's, I want to understand the methods of this study. I want to be able to have a discussion post for my class. I need to bring 3 questions to class, whatever it is. Figure out what is your goal. What do you need to get out of this reading? For research, usually that's a little bit more pointed. You kind of already know why you're reading it, right? You're reading it for the methods, you're reading it for understanding the history of the topic or something like that. Figure out what your goal is. This is really critical because of satisficing. Satisficing is a combination of satisfy and suffice. So you are going to, once you satisfy that goal, it is sufficient, you're sufficing, and then you stop. Stop reading once you have enough information to meet your goal. Can you have multiple goals? Absolutely. But I want you to have some goals, not just to say, I'm going to read this whole article because it was assigned. But what do you want to get out of it? Once you're able to set those goals, you're able to incorporate some of these reading strategies to make it go faster. So you actually get what you need, always knowing you can come back and read it again. Can I give examples of goals? Okay, so maybe my goal is I'm reading a research article because I know that this is like a seminal article for, like my area of study is self-regulated learning. So I'm reading this article or a book chapter because it is one that everybody cites. Okay, I need to figure out why everybody cites it. So that's my goal. Or many times I'm reading to figure out the methods. How did they actually do this research? That's my method, or that's my goal. A lot of times I'm figuring out how, a lot of times in educational research is how did you define the thing that you are studying? And figure out what the definition is. What theory did they use? I study motivation. So what theory of motivation did they use? So you can absolutely have multiple goals, but having those goals clarified for yourself before you start reading so that you know when you're done. That is an important part. We'll kind of get more to that. So getting set your goal, then check in with yourself. This is the self-regulation part. As you're reading it, check in to see, am I understanding what I'm reading? Am I staying motivated and like mentally engaged? And then the critical question, have I met my goal? Have I figured out the methods? I have. Excellent. Stop reading. That's the hard part. But then we practice. We practice using active reading strategies, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. So remember, we're not going to read everything with the same speed. So we're going to do skimming, scanning, and close reading. Not everything deserves close reading. Right now, I'm always talking, I always have to add that right now piece, right? Have you ever read articles multiple times, especially people in their 3rd, 4th, 5th year of the program? If it's a yes, right? You've read the same thing multiple times because it's really important. The things that are important, hard yes, exactly. Yes, you are going to read it again and again. So that's the key thing. You only need to read for what you need for right now. Keeping in your back pocket, I can always come back and read it for a different purpose again later. And you probably will, if it's an important article or book chapter. If it's important, you're going to read it again and again, each time for a slightly different goal. So that's why the goal is important. So the difficulty with class readings is that you don't exactly know your goal. So that it can be a little bit challenging. And that's a good question to ask your professors too, is just say, like, what do you want us to get out of these readings? Can you tell us? Like, ask them to give you a goal, or you take a look at the abstract first and allow that to kind of, and like tie it in with the weekly theme or whatever for the class to figure out, what is my goal with this reading? What am I trying to get out of this? Okay, so let's talk about skimming and scanning. So skimming is a high-level overview of the whole paper. So this is really going quickly. You're looking at titles, you're looking at headings, you're looking at abstracts, things that are sticking out to you. You look for signposts. Signposts, I know this is kind of small, probably, especially if you're looking at it on a small screen, but I'll give you these slides afterwards. So we can see these categories, like a causal question. You'll see a signpost like accounts for, causes, explains. So watch out for clumps of questions, those that start with why or how. So these are some words that can count as signposts that will, like my favorite is, in summary, read that sentence. That's the only thing you need to read is the in summary. Here it is. So really, when you're skimming, you're going fast. You're looking for things that are going to tell you important information right away. Maybe read the intro and conclusion, like the very first paragraph, the very last paragraph. Maybe if you're getting even more detailed, you can read the first sentence of each paragraph just to figure out what's the structure of this paper. Skimming is a great strategy for determining if a paper is relevant. So if you're just looking through different articles to figure out if it's relevant to your research, skimming is a great strategy for this. You can usually tell if it's relevant just by reading the abstract, sometimes by reading the title. You can figure out what it's all about. It's a good strategy for getting the main points. And honestly, it's a good strategy if you lack energy or time. Even if it's for a class, skimming is going to get you about 50% of what you need to know. And sometimes 50% is what you need. Not everything needs 100% understanding right now. Remember, I'm going to tell all of you overachievers, it is not cheating to skim over non-essential material in search of the essential. It's not cheating. Just because your instructor assigned an article, the instructor does not expect you to read every single word. Isn't that crazy? Because they don't. Because they are looking for the essential information. So it's not cheating to skim over the non-essential in search of the essential. But to know what's essential, you have to have those goals. That's why I keep harping on the goals. Okay, skimming. In reality, how I do this, I read on my iPad a lot. So I actually zoom out so that I can't read the details. I can only read headings. And so it really gives me a good, I often say like the skeleton of a reading of like figuring out what are they talking about? What are the different sections in here? What am I going to be? What should I zero in on? You should challenge yourself to go fast when you're doing skimming. It should be fast. Try not to get sucked into any point of this. Sometimes, have you ever seen eye tracking studies on websites and how our eyes, how we read websites? We don't read linearly on websites. And probably if you're looking at this PowerPoint that I have up here, your eyes are kind of darting around from here to there, which is good. Eventually you get the whole thing, you get the whole picture. And that's kind of what I'm asking you to do with skimming. Just let your eyes bounce around on the paper. Figure it all out. You don't have to go linearly. Get a sense of what you're reading first. That will give you a structure and keep you more engaged as if you're doing close reading. Okay, so that's skimming. Let me know, please add questions to there. Okay, there we go. I had a feeling that there was questions. Okay, how fast is fast? Yeah, so it depends. I'm always going to say it depends, but I would say if it's an article that you are reading for your class, I try to challenge myself to do skimming in like 5 minutes or less, really like 2 to 3 minutes. So this is like, I'm talking super fast, but there's different levels. So usually with my skimming, I'm zooming out. So I'm reading headings only. I'm not reading any paragraphs. Maybe I'm looking at a graph. I'm looking at the pictures because they summarize things. Maybe I'll zoom in and read the conclusion. But with that, I'm trying. Then once I do that, you have to kind of each step of the skimming process, you have to say, should I keep skimming? Should I read closer? So it's really the decision points. I think having multiple decision points of, did I read enough? Yes, great, stop and move on. Did I read enough? The answer is no. Okay, I'm going to keep reading, but be strategic about how you're reading. So that's the kind of like between fast and slow. It's more about checking in with yourself to see if you're done. Does that make sense, Lane? But I would say if you want an actual time, don't spend more than 10 minutes on skimming, because that's about enough. More than that, you're actually deep reading. Yep, there you go. Okay, scanning is slightly different than skimming. Scanning is seeking to find specific information. So you're doing close reading, but only for certain parts of the text. So this is, I always have the Control F here, which is like my best friend, Control F. You are looking for specific information. So like I was saying, maybe my goal is I need to know, so like me, like maybe some of you out there study first generation college students, but as we know, they're defined differently in most every paper. So I have to Control F, how are they defining first generation college students? I'm scanning to find that particular information. Does it meet my needs? Okay, great, then I can move forward. No, move on. So scanning is a great strategy for finding answers to questions. For those people who, the hard yes of reading articles again and again, often we're scanning, right? So even though we're reading the article again and again, we don't necessarily read every word every time. We're scanning because I'm like, oh, I know they talked about this in this particular article. I'm just going to scan until I find that section, read that, and then move on. So it's great for finding answers to questions, for defining terms or explaining theories, learning specific methods or analyses, again, determining if it's relevant to your research, and then again, rereading while you are writing. You're not going to be rereading a whole paper. Once you determine it's relevant, you're going to say, when you're actually writing, you're going to be like, go back to the original text. Let me read that paragraph again. Okay, great. Now I'm back. So scanning is actually what we do most often, I would say, especially when you're writing, you're scanning consistently. So this is, again, another key thing to remember. You don't need to memorize. You don't need to memorize. I know sometimes you can hear people say, like, you'll hear the graduate students who are ahead of you in your program, and they'll just whip out these citations super easily. And you're like, how did they do that? How did they memorize that? First of all, some people's memories are better than others. So there's that. But also, my memory's not great. But when you read something over and over, you'll start to remember what basically is in that reading. But the key thing here is you do not need to memorize really anything. You need to know how to understand what you're reading, and you need to know how to find it when you need it. Control F. That's really the critical thing. So we're going to talk about our research notes and more Control F, like our search strategies as we go forward. But that's really the key thing here. So even when you're reading for class, you don't need to memorize. You just need to know what's in there and know how to find it when you need it. So you can reread again and again and again. Okay, so that's skimming and scanning. And then we have deep or close reading. And this is usually what we think of as reading and what we think our professors expect of us and what they typically are not doing. So this is reading for detail. This is, it's close reading. So you're actually reading, you are reading every word, but you do adjust your speed. So you pay more deliberate attention, you slow down for those areas with more signposts, the like in conclusion. Importantly, oh yes, Adrian, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And this is more effortful. So plan for close reading when you are fresh or when you're able to concentrate. For many people, this is first thing in the morning. But, I know graduate student lives are busy, and not always, our schedules are not our own. So figure out when reading works best for you, close reading, because this takes some concentration. So make sure that you plan for this when you're fresh and don't spend too long on it, right? Because you get tired. So try to construct meaning as you read. So analyze, synthesize, compare, critique. This is where we're actually doing that real active thinking as we're reading, having that kind of conversation with an author. One method, the two methods here that are pretty popular. There's the KWL, which is when you're taking notes about what you're reading. You think about, what do we know already? Then you think, what do we want to know about this reading? And then you read, and then you write down, what did we learn? So that's KWL, pretty basic. Kind of similar is the Sq3r method. this is often like geared towards younger students, undergrads or high school students, but first you survey. So this is kind of like our skimming, our preview. You scan the text and figure out the layout, the sections, the pictures, highlighted words, all of that. Then you question, ask yourself questions about the text. What do you want to know? So this is kind of like our goal setting. What does the author want to convey? And what is your goal? What do you want to get out of this reading? Then you read actively while keeping the previous steps in mind. Then you recite. So this is where you kind of summarize what you just read, and then you review. So the review is probably the part that grad students don't get to very often, but this is probably the part when you're when you're writing, that you're going to review and go back to those readings again and again, because you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. But anyway, those are some different methods. There's another method that's kind of newer, and this is really specific to reading research, and it's called the QPC method. So it's kind of, again, focusing on active reading. It's called questioning, predicting, comparing. Predicting/comparing, I guess. So first, the question is, what is the question the authors are trying to address, and why is it important? And then if this were my thesis project, what kind of experimental approach can I take in tackling the problem, the predicting part? Predict what they're going to do. It's tough. This is tough, but if you're in a methods class or something like that, or trying to figure out methods for your own research, this is it's helpful. If you're trying to critique a paper, this is really helpful. It's hard, but it's helpful. What kind of data would I need to generate in order to support the conclusions of this paper? What would convince you? And what conclusion would fit in my previous understanding of the subject? What do you think? What do you think they're going to find? What do you think they're going to conclude? So you can see in the graphic here, like passive reading, you just you go through start to finish and you just say, all right, I guess that's what they found. And you're really not questioning as you're going. Active reading, you're reading with specific questions in mind. You're looking for the answers. Usually you're focusing on the results, the methods and results. You're predicting the figures. What do you want to see in those figures? And then you compare it with what they actually showed you. And then you can come up with your own conclusions. This is a great way to critique a paper. Any questions about this? Okay. Now, prioritizing your reading list. As I mentioned, there's always more to read than you have time to read it. So we have to do some prioritization. How do you decide what's worth it? And this is really the critical component. What's worth it right now? So take a quick skim. Always skim first. It takes a couple minutes. It's really, really helpful to give your mind a context and also to figure out how much energy you should spend reading this. So questions to ask yourself. Does the topic or method fascinate you? Or is it closely relevant to your research? Is it really important? Does it provide a missing piece to your argument? So this is especially when you're writing. Is the article super dense or is it easy to read? You can tell that by a quick skim. And then, so check in with the paper, with what you're reading, and then check in with yourself. Again, your goals. Why are you reading this? And then how much time do you have and how much energy do you have? Let's be realistic. Again, we're grad students. We have a lot going on. And not everything is going to get 100% effort. And that's okay. I want that. Just take a picture of that, put it up on your computer monitor, and just tell yourself that again and again. Not everything is going to get 100% effort, and that's okay. It's often not what's required. Meet your goal, and then stop. Knowing you can always read it again later. You can always get more out of it later. So usually what, for readings for class, what I recommend is doing skimming and scanning before class to meet your goal, and then do a close reading of particular sections after class, after you've had the discussion, and you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. I'm starting to understand more parts. Set aside some time after class to now reread the article. Or you can do close reading before class and then do scanning after. when you are like, okay, I want to reread that section again. Now that we had the discussion, you're going to get something different out of it. So keep in mind the time. What do you need for right now? And what is good to do later in terms of reading, and what makes sense to you? Okay. Okay, so I would love to hear, I want you to think through this for yourself. Hashtag reading goals. Let's make a strategic plan for your readings. We can do this week. I know it's fall break this week, and I'm hoping your professors are giving you a break, but but you know, I know how grad school works, so maybe not. But make a strategic plan for your readings for this week or next week. Let's do this right now. Take an inventory of what you need to read and think about what are your goals or intentions for each reading. Once you determine what your goals are, think through what level of reading is appropriate. Does it just need some skimming? Does it need some scanning? Does it need close reading? Only of certain sections? When are you going to read? Realistically, and also what obstacles might get in the way of actively reading? I want some answers to that last one. Go ahead and type into the chat. What obstacles get in the way of you actively reading? Kids, yes. I'm going to categorize that under distractions. ADHD, I'm going to interpret that. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so internal distractions, like just, yeah, feeling physically tired. People, just people, yes. Yes, okay, yes. So just job requirements, I'll categorize that, Michelle. Job requirements, work, you're tired. Yes. Feeling overwhelmed. All right, I appreciate you all. Yes, imposter syndrome, yes, keep them coming. There's so many obstacles that get in the way of reading that you want to do anything else, right? It's boring. Quality time with family, yes. So we've got priorities, we've got a lack of energy and a lack of time, right? And I know that's why you're here at this workshop, right? So we are going to talk about that, but really try these strategies out, okay? Try to figure out, set your goal for the reading, and the key thing, remember, satisficing. Once you've met your goal, stop reading. I'm gonna say it's okay. It's okay that you didn't read every word. Meet your goal and then stop. Knowing you can always come back later and read it later. Do you think you can do that? Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not confident at all, 10 being really confident, how confident are you that you can use satisficing? You can stop reading once you meet your goal. Okay. All right, 5 to 8. -6 before. Okay, good. Well, that's improvement. I like that. Okay, good. I'm always shooting for over 5. 10 out of 10 is too much, right? We can't be overconfident. So I like a 7. I like a 6. I like an 8. That's great. That's great. So room for improvement, but you're reasonably confident you can do this. I'm confident you guys can do this. Give it a shot. Set those goals, meet those goals, and then stop and do all those other priorities. All right, let's turn to our next one, our notes. Organize your notes to organize your mind. Okay, again, I'm gonna ask you to type in the chat. How do you can answer any of these questions. How do you organize your research or reading notes? So in terms of what do you use? Like, do you use a notebook? Do you use an Excel document, Word documents, OneNote, Notability, anything else? Just annotating on PDFs? Where do you take your notes? Let me hear that first. That one. Oh, Notion, great. Word documents, okay, handwritten notebook and Excel. Got everything. Okay, OneNote, Zotero, and annotating on PDFs and printing them out. I didn't include that one. Printing them out and writing things on them. or highlighting, annotated bibliography on Word, okay. Word doc for notes on specific readings, but also annotating. But then you have notes in 2 places. Yes, I know, struggles. I mean, the big bottom line here is I've not found one program that does it all. I would say the closest one is Notion, but there's nothing that does everything that I want it to do. So you're probably going to have notes in a couple different places, but knowing usually the best thing is just picking one and going with it. There isn't a perfect one, a perfect note-taking system out there, as far as I know. And again, each person prefers different things. So try them out. We'll talk about them in a second. But all right, so think about what you like about it and what could be improved about your note-taking. So I won't ask you to type into the chat unless you want to, but I want to talk about what you should put in your notes. So that's the key thing here. And we talked about how you take notes. What are you actually putting in your notes? Okay, bottom line again, the content of your notes depends on your goal. Yes, I'm coming back to your reading goal. Yes, again, this is why it's so important. What is your goal for reading? That determines what you should take notes on. That's why we need a goal. Okay, so what should you put in your notes? Quotes. We're going to do a little copy and paste. Always citing, but copy and paste. I mean, let's use technology as best we can. Again, there's only so many hours in the day. Quotes are great. Do some major takeaways. What are the goals of the paper? How do the authors do their analysis? What are the major contributions of the paper? What are the main findings? So think about big picture takeaways. What is it? Those are great things to take to class too. If you want to do so, like Leslie said, an annotated bibliography on Word, especially when you're reading stuff that you think is going to be helpful for your research, a summary is great. So if you're not sure of how to write a summary, or you want kind of a more structured way to write it, you can look up Rhetorical Précis, which I believe is how you say that. It's French, but it is a tool used. I'm not sure where it was started, maybe philosophy. I'm not really sure, but Rhetorical Précis, it's a very structured 4 sentences. Each sentence has a specific role in your summary. 4 sentences, that's it. That's all you get to summarize a whole reading. So I don't have a particular one that I love, but there's loads of Rhetorical Précis templates. Just Google Rhetorical Précis template. There's tons of them. And it's very structured. So they're all pretty much the same. So it's a great way to get started. If you're trying to summarize, it'll give you kind of a template to go on. You can also do a contextual summary, which is figuring out, summarizing the reading in the context that you need it for. Again, this relates to your goals. It relates to your research or your class or whatever. What is the summary in terms of why am I reading this? Connections with other works. So those are some notes you should be taking down. How does this relate to other things that you read? And then memos. So kind of like in qualitative analysis, you want your thoughts in your notes as well. Your analysis. So maybe for doing that prediction or comparison or critiquing a paper, you want your analysis in the memos as well. You want your questions about it. You want your research ideas. If it, makes you think of like, oh, I can do that, then write down your research ideas. This is a lot of stuff, right? So organizing our notes is really important here. But those are some suggestions on what you could include. You don't have to do all of those for every reading, of course. Okay, note-taking strategies. Again, like I said, there's no like one size fits all that's going to be best for everybody, but I wanted to talk about some different options. And these have different levels, different uses, and different levels of effort involved in each one. So the least amount of effort is highlighting and underlining. You are just reading and just saying, oh, that thing that they said is important. Often we end up highlighting like the whole thing, right? So it's not super effective, but it will keep your brain minimally engaged as you're reading. So that's kind of helpful. If you highlight, like using Mendeley or something like that, you can do a nice copy and paste so that you have those notes for later. But this is a pretty basic method. It works. If you're not super invested in the reading, then great. You can also add notes in the margins. What does a reading say? What does it do? So this is adding your memos in there. You could have a separate research memo or notebook, paper and pencil or electronic, either way, but something like a Word document, OneNote, an actual notebook, whatever, those are your notes kept in there. You could have a separate document for each reading, which I think sounds like maybe Leslie and Lindsay are doing, for having a citation, a summary, and then how it fits with your research or the class or whatever you're reading it for. So a separate document for each summary for each reading that you have. Then we can also do a synthesis matrix, which I'll show you on the next slide. So this is, I use Excel, you could use Notion, just a matrix that shows quick facts or key takeaways and critical comparisons between different readings. You could also do a mind map. I don't have an example of that one, but if you want to be more, especially if you're writing, mind maps are great for this, to just say like, how are all these different readings and ideas connected? Yeah, separate doc by major topic, that's great. And so you have multiple readings within each document, but maybe each reading gets its own page or something like that. Okay, so this is a synthesis matrix. Does anybody use something like this? Okay, yeah, Rachel does. Okay, I can send you a blank. It's very plain, but I can send you a template to get started with if you would like one. A synthesis, yeah, great, I can send that. A synthesis matrix template is basically, again, this is super small, I know, but it is just columns that show what you want to know about each reading, and each row is a different reading. So you should adjust the columns to meet your needs. And sometimes you don't know what your needs are, so feel free to add columns as you're going. That's totally fine. But usually you start with, here's the reference, again, copy and paste. For me, this is looking again at first generation students. So it is a first generation definition. How do they define it? What's the sample? What's the challenges for first generation students? What's their motivation? Because that's what we're studying. So it kind of depends on what you're studying to determine what your columns are, but it's key points and key comparisons across different readings, especially if there's like different sides of an argument. This works so well. So it's also super searchable, Control F. So write down, you can use quotes in here, copy and paste as much as you want, because now it's all attached in a row to one reading, one reference. And then you can add your own notes here. You can add like future readings or like whatever you want to make it organized. And feel free to leave blank spots. So you can leave blank spots all you want. That's okay. This is just for you. And remembering you can always go back later and add more. But try to keep it minimal, just so it is, again, quick. But if for readings for class, you can just add rows for your planned readings for your research or for your class, and then fill them in. So now, when I ask you what's your goal for your reading, your columns are your goals for your reading. I want to fill in these columns. So you're scanning, looking for particular information. How did they define first generation? What are the challenges? What are the findings? So now you're reading with a purpose, right? To fill in these boxes. Does that make sense? Okay, do you think you can use this? Okay, all right, cool. Okay, so that's now. Let's talk about our citation managers. Getting back to this. Okay. Does anybody use paper files anymore? Paper files might I used to use them. I had like boxes full of them, but I don't have a printer anymore. So, so many people will use citation manager, online citation managers, which is basically keeping track of all these articles that you read, maybe a little, maybe a lot of. So that, again, it's super searchable. Yes, piles of papers around your office floor. Yes, exactly. So this is a great way to keep track of everything you're reading. Sometimes you can keep the notes in there, but usually it's more related to finding that article again when you need it, right? You don't have to memorize it. You've got a citation manager. Now, which one should you use? I don't know. I've tried them all. They all have pluses and minuses, but they're all actually pretty similar. Things to consider. So you can look at this. I have, again, this guide you can kind of look through that I think is from earlier this year, but I think it should still be relevant. It's kind of, I don't know. Tell me, put into the chat if you use one of these citation managers. What do you use? We tend to go by discipline. And so think about your workflow. How do you like to read? How do you like to search for things? Think about your discipline and your budget, obviously. And then almost always your citation manager is going to be determined by who you're working with, because some of them are, they're like, oh, I'm already on Zotero. Okay, so I'll use Zotero too. Great, fantastic. So yeah, Mendeley and Zotero are absolutely the top two for people in educational studies or in education. You get them for free as an Ohio State student. I would say either. I've used both for different projects. Mendeley is my main go-to, but I have nothing against Zotero. It's just you pick one and you go with it. So so I don't have really strong preferences here, as you can tell. My main recommendation is pick one and stick with it. Just don't try and switch midstream. It's not really worth it. Zotero does play nicer on sharing files, but I think Mendeley kind of works better with Microsoft Word, or at least since I've used it. But really, they're about the same. So does anybody have, I don't know if anybody wants to share their strong preferences here on citation managers, but really it's about who you work with. Just find out what your people in your lab are doing, or people your advisor uses, and just use that. It's usually the best method. Okay, let's get back to those obstacles, because we just have a little bit of time left. So those obstacles to reading and note taking. So common things I hear is that I have trouble getting started. I know I have to read and I just have trouble getting started. All those obstacles you mentioned before. So use timers. Use timers. I'm a big fan of the Forest app. I show this to like everybody in every workshop I do, but it's because I love it that much. I don't get paid from this, and yes, it does cost about $4 to download, but this is what the Forest app looks like. Does anybody use it? It's like a timer app, or like a Pomodoro kind of app. You set your timer. You can grow your scarecrow in the app. I love it. This is my, I haven't used it apparently today. I usually have a Tuesday tulip that I'm growing. This is my Wisteria Wednesday, because I love an alliteration. But you pick a plant, you set your time. This one's 20 minutes. You hit plant, your tree will start to grow. If you go to any other app on your phone while your tree is growing, your tree will die. There you go. So it's super simple. It's super effective. Set it, start small. Start with 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 15, whatever you can commit to for reading, and then just keep going, giving yourself breaks. Join reading or writing groups. You're all here, which means you're all struggling with this. So let's all talk to each other and join some reading or writing groups, so that you can all just having solidarity with other grad students doing it at the same time. It's accountability partner. It's helpful. Yes, I'm reading Adrian's message here about, sometimes it won't let you open it after you upload it. Yeah, it is something. There's also connections with like like Google Chrome. So they have different extension, the Mendeley and Zotero have different extensions you can add. So when you're searching for different articles, you can just automatically download it. I gotta be honest, I don't trust them. So because again, it sometimes auto-populates with wrong information. So it does take, that's the effort required for Mendeley and Zotero, is just when you upload something, you have to go in and make sure that the information is correct right away, or else it's just going to be kind of a pain for you down the road. I know, I don't have an easy solution to that one. Okay, if your mind is wandering, make sure you're using those active reading strategies. Do take physical breaks where you're actually standing up and doing things. Keep a distraction pad. Distraction pad is just a notepad. Try to be analog on this. A piece of paper next to your workstation where any intruding thoughts that is like, I have to buy toilet paper, or I need to email this guy, or, oh, I need to grade papers. Write it down, set it down, and refocus. That's the mantra. Write it down, try to be 4 words or less. Write it down, set it down, refocus. And that can help with all of those distracting thoughts that happen as we're reading, because our brain is searching for anything else to focus on. Try to do that. Do you switch reading strategies mid-read? You're starting with skimming and all of a sudden you're close reading? No, 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 no. Remember, satisfying, you are trying to write down your goal for the read for today's reading, and stick to that goal. So if you're switching, you find yourself switching strategies, then try to write down your goal first and say, here's what I need to know from this reading. Once I get to that, I'm stopping. Are you constantly on the hunt for the next big read? So do you end up with like 20 or 30 tabs open because you keep clicking on all the hyperlinks for all the different like citations? Yeah, anybody? Yes, I do that too. So it's okay. And if you're in an exploration stage, go ahead and open up all the tabs. Just be aware you're not doing close reading of all these things. That's just not happening. So if you're trying to focus on close reading on one paper, try again to go analog, or so you can either copy and paste into a Word document. Do not click on hyperlinks. I know it's so hard, but that's really the best way to do it, is to keep that list of citations that you want to look up after you're done reading. But this is where a timer can help too. I'm going to read for 20 minutes. I'm not going to open up anything else. I'm going to take a list so that I remember what I want to open up. But now, after you go in, you don't have a whole bunch of tabs open, and you can say, okay, now I'm going to go through each one. It takes a little bit more effort, and actually you only read the ones that you're actually interested in, and then plan a time to actually read it. So it takes a little bit more work, which actually limits the kind of impulsive nature of opening up all those hyperlinks. Okay, but like I said, I do it too. I do it too. Okay, last thing is doing it right now. So remember, writing is part of reading. And like Lane said, Lane works at the Writing Center. There's an accountability writing group. Best friends with the Writing Center. They're fantastic. So please focus. You can get together with those or people in your program or whatever. I have multiple writing groups that I have throughout the week. So when do you stop reading and start writing? Now, right now, like just now. Yep. But you'll say, but I don't know enough yet. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You have a fear of missing out. Maybe I haven't read the best thing yet. Got to keep reading. No, you don't. But it's going to sound terrible. Yes, it will. Yeah, it will. That's okay. It's okay. Just start writing. All right, take a deep breath. You're just going to start writing, even though it's going to sound terrible. You don't know enough yet, and that's okay. That's the way that we process information, is by writing. So make writing easier by doing it more often. So schedule, this is the best, the advice for every faculty member and everybody is have a daily writing time. It reduces anxiety of starting writing. It reduces the anxiety of having to do it all at once, and it helps you to quickly focus. Start small, 15 to 30 minutes. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. Set a timer and just say, I'm just going to write a bunch of nonsense for 15 to 30 minutes. It won't be nonsense. You know stuff. I know you do. Jumpstart writing by reading first. So you can plan your reading goals the day before and then say, okay, I'm going to read this and then I'm going to write. So if it feels better to read first, that's okay. Just make sure you stop and you start writing at some point. Work together, have accountability buddies, Zoom writing groups, weekly reading or writing goals, writing retreats that the Writing Center has as well. All of these are fantastic. Recommendations for goals for writing. It really, once you have a daily writing time, if you're working on a particular project, then that can help to say like, okay, each day you just determine what you're doing next. So it's not really, for me, I can't really have that clear of a plan way ahead of time. I just have to, at the end of my 30 minutes, say, well, I didn't finish that paragraph. That's what I'm going to work on tomorrow. If you're just reading to explore the area, then that's when you can write those summaries, do the rhetorical précis, fill in a research synthesis matrix. So you can either say, I'm going to, sometimes my 30 minutes is, I'm just going to explore this topic that I don't really know much about. And that's when I have all the tabs open. Or being more focused, I have an actual paragraph to write or to edit as a part of this paper that I'm writing. So it kind of depends on the project, Michelle, if that makes sense. I'm going to sneeze. Use your resources. The NCFDD, this is Faculty Development and Diversity, something like that. They have a writing boot camp. I think it's actually starting next week. Go ahead and sign up for it. The deadline is tomorrow. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to facultydiversity.org. Check it out. Everybody, Ohio State student, has free access to this. Also, the Dennis Learning Center has our productivity program. I think it is full for this semester, but we can have more next semester as well. Okay, so to finish up, we want to schedule our reading and writing. So incorporate it into your weekly schedule. Identify a 30 to 90 minute block that you can dedicate to reading or writing for research. If you would like, you can post your time, the times that you tend to write every week. You can post that in the chat. We can find some writing partners right now. And identify a mini goal for each block this week. And then this is the clear thing, protect it. They say you have to treat your writing time like it's a meeting with the dean. Do not schedule things over it. It's not a free session. This is really important. Prioritize it, honor it, and protect it. Okay, overall, we talked today about building a toolbox of reading strategies, making a strategic plan for reading, identifying goals of research notes, developing a note-taking system, identifying potential obstacles, and making a weekly writing schedule. This is a lot, right? But you can do it, and the DLC can help. So I'll give you a brief overview if you're not familiar with the Dennis Learning Center. We're here to help. We help with things like smarter study strategies, time management, reducing procrastination, maintaining motivation, organization, note-taking, test-taking, and much more. And we do this through a couple different ways. We have courses, coaching, workshops, and online resources. For graduate students, probably academic coaching is our most popular. We do have 5 graduate coaches right now, including myself, that you can meet with to help identify your personal goals or personal struggles, and we can help you work with that. Please do follow us on social media. You can scan our QR code there or go to @DLC_OSU on pretty much every platform. Our website is dennislearningcenter.osu.edu, and you can go to coaching to schedule a coaching appointment if you would like. All right, and thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate your attention. And I will send you out a survey after this to let me know how the workshop was. So if you'd like to email me, you can email dlc@osu.edu. That goes right to me. So please let me know if you have any questions or if you want to set up a writing time. I'm totally into it. I need it. I need the help. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Happy reading.